30 years ago today that the tropical storm known as Agnes tore through the eastern seaboard, forcing the Susquehanna River in Wyoming Valley to overflow its banks, resulting in the flood of 1972. Now, at that time, News 22's David DeCosmo was the news director of WYOK Radio. But through a series of events, he became the source for the media as well as the public's information. Earlier this week, I sat down with David. He shares his thoughts during those tense times. The tropical storm known as Agnes 30 years ago was a storm that would change people's lives in the Wyoming Valley forever. On June 23, 1972, the day the Susquehanna River overflowed its banks, newsman David DeCosmo had been tapped by Civil Defense Director Frank Townend to act as public information officer.
A dike in Plymouth that was never quite repaired after some mine subsidences causing very bad problems.
What that meant was that any announcement regarding the flooding and evacuation would come from the Civil Defense Director, but through his messenger, now David DeCosmo.
I went to the courthouse to use our emergency two-way radio, and General Townend actually had no one who was in a position to be a public information officer. He said he wanted me, and he said he needed me.
Townend picked a dedicated public servant in DeCosmo. Like many other volunteers, those few days in June of '72 were days of uncertainty.
I called my wife to tell her I'd be a little late. I came home 2.5 days later. No sleep during any of that time, and many other people served longer.
Though David DeCosmo had seen more than his share of disasters firsthand in his many days as a newsman, nothing could have prepared him for the day 30 years ago when the Susquehanna overflowed its banks. David recalls the most frightening moment of the experience as he stood outside the courthouse, where Civil Defense was located, and prepared to give the announcement that at any moment the siren might sound, signaling an end to the sandbagging effort.
As I was giving that announcement that it was going to happen, it did happen. And when that siren went off, you could feel the hairs on the back of your head stand up, and I'm sure many other people felt that way, because at that point you knew you had lost. You had fought your best, but the battle was over and was lost.
As the waters of the Susquehanna completely inundated Wilkes-Barre, DeCosmo says things were happening quickly, as Civil Defense organized thousands of volunteers and prepared shelter for thousands of flood victims. Did you ever feel like you were in over your head?
I was a lot younger. It was an awesome responsibility, although I was not making the decisions. I was the messenger. And that was still an awesome responsibility.
David says that awesome responsibility made him a better broadcaster, realizing just how much what journalists say and write impacts what the public hears and feels. Though the flood caused millions of dollars in damage and destroyed thousands of homes, loss of life was held to 3 victims.
After 68 years, a Hazleton projectionist is retiring his reels. Tony DeCosmo started as a full-time projectionist in Hazleton in 1925. He has spent many a night here in the Churchill Cinema and remembers when there were just 2 theaters. Now there are 5. DeCosmo showed the first sound movie in Hazleton, The Jazz Singer. On the final night of his long-standing career tonight, DeCosmo was greeted by local film legend Jack Palance.
He's hoping something wanted to be here on his closing night.
Yeah, he wants to be here last night.
I wish I'd been here a couple of nights ago.
Yes.
I understand they were having a hell of a party. Tonight we're just sitting around.
Just a slow night. Sunday nights are slow, especially the second show.
I'm here because of the close of his amazing
career, whatever.
The 88-year-old projectionist says he's retiring because the work just got to be too much when the theater expanded. By the way, DeCosmo is the father of News 22 reporter David DeCosmo.